Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I missed out last week at the last minute. I apologize, but I'm here now. You should in a second here see my screen. Here to answer any and all questions. Also, I guess we'll find out in a second here how many are Bloomin' users so that we can go ahead and maybe talk about the Bloomin' update. You should see the website, right, Donna? Do you see the website? Yeah. Okay. All
Uh,
right. Couple of things.
yes.
Do you? Okay, great. Okay. So a couple of things here I just want to bring to your attention in our resource hub for completely free. Um, we have our resources here, but we also have another two issues about Lisa's take. Um, the third one is about when is a student cost a supply and or when is it an other or a budget red flag? That's, I think, timely since most of y'all are drafting or working on your budgets for 26, 27. So you might want to check that out because that's something I just recently got clarification on. I imagine when you start reading and looking into stuff, you're like, okay, so when it's this, it's a supply, but when it's something like this, it goes under other, the other category, not another other category, but there is a category, as you know, that's called other. Another issue that is available right now is when staff travel with students. How should TRIO projects split the cost? Another issue that I really hadn't gotten a chance to look into more detail until I realized, so that's why whenever I've turned my budget into the past, the program officer has made me separate the travel costs when I travel with the students. And then there's another little twist when it's SSS related. So you may want to check that out. I mean, um, these issue number three and number four are pretty much universal to any TRIO program, but I believe number four adds a little something something to SSS because we're the only ones that have a 4% cap on our staff travel, and it tells you and it breaks down what that 4% should count and that it shouldn't count when you travel with the students, but it can't be considered participant support costs either. So check it out, okay? That's there as well. And I believe, let's see here, we also have our free resources that are there. And I'm going to now shift over to share the SSS. Let me see here. Of course, it's not open. I have it open here in my other part here. Okay, so we're going to talk about, there it is, and I will share it now. The SSS APR. If you guys have any questions regarding the fields, and I will reopen it here. I know I have it open somewhere, and I will share here in a second here. Bear with me, okay? All righty. So do we have any questions before I go ahead and ask Donna? Donna, in a second here, I'd like to launch a poll as to see how many people we have on board right now that are using Bloomin versus student access whenever you get a chance. I've been getting a lot of questions regarding new summer students. So yes, thank you. So again, we're going to ask you if this is your first APR and also which database are you currently using right now? Just to get a heads up because I do have the Bloomin demo, the new version. And I was going to go directly in there to show people some stuff to they can use to work on their APR. And again, we may have some folks with Lakai. Don't want to leave you out either. Let me see, student access folks. Yes, we have student access folks as well. Don't want to leave you out, but I'm wondering if there's any way you can see, you know, some similarities. The fields are the same. They may be in a different location, but I was just going to try to share some tips specific to that setup, but they should pretty much come across. They may look different, but they should still have the same process. But I first wanted to answer any questions that y'all have regarding, and you can do it in Q&A. Now you can, Q&A allows you to be anonymous. If you would, thank you, Don, for sharing that. If you could go ahead and share, what field you're looking at. Um, I always start by stating, that I prefer or I recommend that when you work on the APR, that you first only do the APR for your active served and reported students, the amount of students you are funded to serve. I strongly recommend when you go into your platform, whatever you use, Bloomin, Lakai, student access that you forget about everything else except your 140 or your 100 or your 240. I mean, the students that you are funded to serve, and ignore working on your prior year students until later. That way you have a clearer mindset on what services, I mean, what students, what the answers should be for the students that are active, cert, and reported versus those that are prior year. You may have more prior year students to hundreds and hundreds of prior year students, but let me tell you, they are actually easier to work with because once somebody becomes a prior year student, 99% of the time, their answers are not applicable across the board until they're old enough or their cohort is old enough to be considered for the graduation and transfer objectives. Okay. Other than that, once they're prior year, unless they come back, when they come back, they can be continuing. They don't have to reapply. Only if they've been gone for so long that it's been before the last two funding cycles, so about 10 years, that someone's been gone more than 10 years, then they can come back as brand new with a new case number. But if in between they were served, their date of last service was within a 10-year period of time, they can come back as continuing, and depending on how, what their cohort was, how old their cohort is. Some of them may come back as what we call out of range. They're a code 99. And when it comes time to upload the Excel file, you may have to remove on the Excel file their case number. Okay. Why do you continue to work with these students? Because you probably needed the numbers. Their eligibility probably was helpful. Maybe they were low income first generation. And a lot of times it's because sometimes we need them more than they need us. But of course, all students that you serve every year have to demonstrate that they have a need for project services. Unlike some of the other TRIO programs, sometimes a need is not as the one of the criteria for establishment of eligibility, but it is for SSS. So they have to need you. And this is why we talk about, well, can I serve a student who, has a certificate or has a diploma already? And maybe, and it all depends on capacity and those issues as well. Okay, let me go ahead and Donna, can you hear that? Can you
Uh,
hear something?
I just hear you.
Okay, okay, good. Oh, you hear me? Okay, great. Okay, so look, we're amongst friends. I just had my dad, I bought a sign that says welcome, when they can welcome, but then I turned it around and it says I'm in a meeting. And still people don't respond to it. I guess they don't read it. Plus, the house is a mess, so you know what. So bear with me. It's true. So if you hear anything or dogs barking or whatever, so be it. Anyway, so as I was saying, this every student you serve has to have a need for services. And of course, based on eligibility of students that are enrolled or accepted for enrollment, U.S. citizen or permanent residence, or maybe they're here for any other purpose than temporary and they have a particular type of visa to demonstrate that, then low income first generation, and then they have to show that they have a need for the program. It never says they have to have a high school diploma. It never says that you cannot serve somebody who is not already with any type of degree. As long as you can show they need your services and you're not taking away from someone who has no post-secondary accomplishments whatsoever. You want to put priority for them, but then of course, if you still have slots open and they still need the help and have the need, the regulations allow you to do that. You can choose as a policy not to do that. Okay. So again, I guess if we don't have any questions, I'm keeping and watch here in the Q&A, but I'm going to go through some of the fields again. And then I will, at the very end, we can talk about the Blumen setup just to show you where you could use your database should be already set up. I know Lakai and Student Access and Blumen have it set up. So if you go into a student's individual window, it will produce or generate an Excel file. this Excel file, obviously, there's 37 fields, and there should be one for each student that you are having to report on, which is a combination of your funded to serve plus your prior year students together. Okay. But like I said, I'm going to repeat that I strongly recommend that you all do the sorry, it's just crazy here, that you all go ahead and first do the APR for your new and continuing students and those amazing new summer kids that are part of this year, but their cohorts 26, 27, get their APR done as soon as possible. And then you want to move on to do your prior year students. Okay. So we have a question here. All right. New summer at the end of this. You can ask a question right now about new summer students. So go ahead. I'll keep going. I'm not going to do field by field, just things that I think have come up in certain fields. But go ahead when you get a chance. It would be great if you want to just type in your question. Just let me know what field number you want to talk about and type your question in. Okay. As you're doing that, okay. The previous director report. Here we go. The previous director reported APR data. I guess for the last. Okay, the previous director reported APR data for the whole funding cycle from summer through spring quarter. Okay. I've heard of others reporting from fall through summer. Since our fall quarter starts toward the end of September, should I change the APR this year since it's year one and report starting with the fall quarter instead? Great question. Okay, so to answer your question, let's not worry about what has been reported in the past. Let's get back on track. And in their defense, for the longest time, the department really didn't come out and say when was the first day of your reporting period. People were confused. Directors were confused. Um, the program officers were confused. I have emails where they state, oh, it's September 1st, September 1st. And I thought, well, that's the budget. It doesn't necessarily match, right? It doesn't match the academic year. So for so many years, we were kind of, you know, you guys decide and you come up with your own, definition and things like that. But it's very clear if you look on page one of the instructions. This is the APR form, but on the instructions that are also in the Google Drive, it states there that you need to list your reporting period needs to match your first day of classes. So to answer your question, Field 4B on part one, section one, part one, 4B, first day of classes at the grantee institution. My answer to you would be, what was the first date of fall classes in 2025? It looks like it was probably toward the end of September. That would be the answer there. So that's the first day of your reporting period. Then that would go on until the day before classes start for fall of 2026. So in order to get back on track, you may have to shave off part of your year in one APR to get back on track. I hope that answered your question, but 4B on this form and also in the instructions will tell you that you have to go by whatever is the first day of fall classes. And in this case, for the APR for fall 2025, for 25-26, it would be fall of 2025 whenever your classes started. Okay. So great question. Thank you for that. And then I think we're still waiting for the summer student. But yeah, I mean, it happens. And a lot of people still will fight me on this and say, no, it's September 1st, August 31st. No, that happens to be your budget. And some people actually have school starting September 1st. So it matches this year. So it'll always change. Don't you love it? That date might change slightly every year since every fall semester, the first day of classes may fluctuate. Clarity is needed on the following fields 8 through 9. We have a student who was first enrolled at the college in fall 2025. The student joined TRIO in May of 2026. We marked this student as a new student. However, I believe the student should be marked as a new participant. Okay, so let's go to fields 8 and 9. Is that correct? Well, maybe not 8 and 9. Maybe you meant to put in maybe field 22. So let's talk about this. This happens a lot, y'all. Okay, so let's go to, I believe, 22, participant status. I believe that's what you mean. We have a student who was first enrolled at the college in fall of 2025. That's fine. Fall 2020. So their first enrollment date, let's just, this is what I usually do. You ask me one question, I'll ask you 10 to give you the answer, just to make sure I have this correct. So for 17, this student would probably have some date in August or September of 2025 when they first started at the institution. But the student joined TRIO in May of 2026. Okay, so it's still in May, so they're part of 25, 26. This actually they're not a new student. Was your semester still going on? Did your semester, I mean, I use the June 1st start date as the cutoff as to when someone has to be considered a summer student. Now, the next question I have for you is for field 18. So 17 was when they first started. They could be at the college for you know, 10 years or 5 months. This person was already enrolled at the college in the fall. So they were here in fall of 2025 and all of spring of 2026. The question now is, what was the date of first service that we put in field 18? So I need you to let me know, was their date of first service sometime in May or was it in June? And it makes a difference. I'm hoping it occurred sometime in May. Okay. All right. So then, in that case, because it didn't cross over to be after June 1st, then I would make that student a new student. And not because of the enrollment date, 17, it's because of field 18. The first enrollment date, they could have been here 2 or 3 years, 10 years on college campus, and then realize that you all were there. Well, then that's the case. Then it doesn't matter about 17. It just so happens it happened this first year that they were first year at the institution. It's really about their first day served. So you said that it happened in May of 2026. So this student would be cohort 2526 or code 27 at the very tail end, and their participant status is going to be new. So they count toward this year of 2025 six numbers, but they'll be also part of 25, 26. Now they're starting toward the end of the semester, right? Before June 1st. So you're losing time with them because had they been selected back in fall of 2025, you'd have a whole full, and I'm assuming your 4 year or 2 year college. If you're a 2 year, you have a whole 4 years, full 4 years. If you're, a 4 year, you have 6 years. The only disadvantage here by picking up somebody toward the end of May before June is, and I don't see it as a disadvantage, honestly, because I think sometimes the new summer students are more of a headache record keeping wise. Because this student was still served for the first time in May, I can still claim them as a new student, regular new student. Their cohort is 25, 26. They count toward my numbers. The only thing is, I don't have a full 4 or 6 years with them. I have less than that. If I want to get, a full and then some couple of months, years to get them to graduate or graduate and transfer, you may consider, you know, stating that they maybe receive services after the semester ended, so you could push them back to force to make them a new summer student. But the only thing there is this explanation here that sometimes throws me off, that I highlighted here. Um, about the new summer participant. If you want to look on page 10, because they go into detail, field 22 is tough. I mean, it's got a lot of insight. If you want that student, if you want to force them to be a new summer student, um, the only thing is, it depends on whether they were taking credit courses. Well, whether they're taking credit courses or not, this thing I highlighted in yellow comes up. So we don't care if they took summer classes or they did not, but they were coming back in the fall. bottom line is for both of these, it says this definition of new summer student does not include a student enrolled at the grantee institution prior to the summer session, but who received services from the SSS project for the first time during the summer. This individual would meet the definition of a regular new participant and would be in the 25-26 cohort. So that's another way to answer your question. Okay, that's why I would say that this student, because they were enrolled the previous semester already before the summer, they're not true new summer students. So that's the intent. The intent for new summer students are so they can be the traditional first time, first year students or transfer students coming to your institution for the first time. This student was already enrolled. Even though it was their first year of enrollment, they were there in the fall and the spring. So according to this, they cannot be new summer kids. They will have to be new kids. Okay. Hi, I'm a brand new grant. Our institution's academic year 26-27 will start August 24th. My question, are participants who join our program August 25th added to year one or year two? So to answer your question, great question. We go back to the top here. And notice that question number 4 is not part of the 37 fields. So you might totally miss it until you're working on the APR, and then it throws a wrench in all your plans because this date up here in 4B will be used against you, so to speak, when you answer questions in that separate 37 fields. So you're like, where are they getting this information from? Well, from here. They talk. This part of the APR, part 1, 4B, will talk to those 37 fields. So if your year for 26-27 starts August 24th, the question then becomes, again, joining, people say I recruited, I selected. The only thing I respond to when for field number 18, which is the most important field in my opinion of the whole APR, when was their first date of service? I'm assuming that when you say they joined our program on August 25th, then their first date of service is happening after August 25th. So definitely that would be in 26-27. So those students that received their first service on or after August 24th, on or after August 24th, must be new students for the 26-27 academic year. Okay, so they would not make it on the 25-26, right? And that's and again, we have to go by data first service. I'm assuming if they joined on August 25th, that their data first service is occurring even after that. Okay, so I hope that clarifies that for you. Someone said community college. So yes, so community college, you have 4 years to work with a student to see if they graduate and transfer. And if you're a 4-year college, you have 6 years to see if a student will graduate from the first time they were new to your institution. Sometimes our students are admitted into the BAS program while they are still completing their AAS degree with only 1 or 2 courses remaining. How should I report these students? Completing their AS degree with only. All right, so I'm looking at just the second half of this question. So when a student comes in, um, while they're still completing with only one, I need a little bit more information about how should what field do you mean? Do you mean their performance or I need a field number. So if you can, when y'all are asking these questions, say field 22, is that where you mean for me to let you know how to report them? Or are you talking about their educational attainment later on in some of the other fields here? I'm trying to figure out, sometimes our students are admitted while they're still completing and when you say are admitted into the program with only 1 or 2 courses remaining. Okay, how should I report these students at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year? And I need a little bit more information about which field you specifically want to know how they should be reported on based on this. I don't know if they're a brand new student. I don't know if you're asking if with so little time left, should they have been selected? I say yes. I don't know if it's a new student. Do you mean about number of hours they're coming in with? So I need a little bit more information You're welcome about the summer information. Summer students, I love summer students because, of course, it gives me a chance to get my numbers. But there's also and the older I get, the more it messes with my head. These summer students reporting, you know, they count for this year number wise, but their cohort is next year. And then in the immediate subsequent year after their first year, their second year, they're not continuing. They're finally new because they were new summer the first year, even though it was for a couple of weeks sometimes or a month or two during the summer. Then their second year, they're finally new. And it's not until their third year that they're continuing. And if I use them to help me get my numbers for 25, 26, even though they're cohort 26, 27, there's an issue if they don't come back like I thought they would to keep going, keep coming back to the campus that immediate fall after their first summer. Stuff happens. And if they don't come and you've already reported on them, you have to be wrong for a whole year and act like they're active, served, and reported in a new participant because you can't make them prior years. So once you're a new summer student, you can't immediately in the next year become a prior year student. You have to be a new student for 1 year at least. Then you can be a prior year student. All right, we have another question, I think, or does this say what? Let me see here. So yeah, I wish I can help you on that one. I just need a little bit more information. I'm not sure on that one how to report that student. So let me know if y'all can keep an eye on that. Let me know when they come back with some more questions so I can answer that. Or you can always email me if it's too complicated. You can email me. But again, sorry, but usually you ask me one question, I got to ask you three or four because there are a couple more things we have to take into account. Right. So, one thing I think that's going to, don't you, I'm just going to speculate here, but I believe that one thing that may delay, and let's just talk about delays because talking about them maybe makes them go away and not happen rather than, oh, you know what? No one ever mentioned that there might be a delay. The only reason I think there may be a delay on this APR, there's a variety of reasons, right? We got a lot going on. Who knows who's going to administer the APR. I would have never thought that there would be an interagency agreement between Department of Ed and Department of Labor for them to take the lead on the talent search and EOC competition, but it happened. So why not, would it be crazy to think that the Department of Labor would take over the administration of the APR? Not crazy, but something that I think might be an issue is recently OMB made a change in the way they ask for ethnicity background and fields. So it impacted any time, any federal program, and the manner in which they ask and collect information about race and ethnicity. So it's changed. So that means I'm assuming that any publications or documents or federal documents asking for reporting data would have to be updated. And that means that fields 9, 10, 11, and 12, and the choices that you have there, 13, 14, may be changed. I don't know how. I remember seeing a draft of what the department or whoever says, OMB says what has to happen. And so I don't know if they're going to say, okay, this year with everybody you're currently serving, you'll have to reclassify them because now we have more choices, is what I saw. Um, are they wanting us to go back to continuing students or prior year students that are still in the APR to fix that? I don't know, because in the past, when we've had like this disability 15B, that's a fairly new field, couple of years old. And this is something that when it popped up, nobody knew it was going to pop up. Not even the vendor. It kind of popped up at the last minute. Or maybe we missed an OMB discussion. But anyway, popped up and everyone had to scramble to create the field for it. And then we thought, well, surely they just want us to talk about our active served kids, the active or served. Oh, okay. Well, I get how maybe they want us to answer that for those students, but no, they wanted that response for everybody, your funded to serve plus the prior year students. So I don't know if they're going to do that about eligibility. And maybe I'm just, stirring stuff up that's not going to happen, but at least that's something I've been thinking about, and you might want to. So more reason to get everything else done so that if that goes down like that, and it just buys us a little bit more time so we're not as panicked in case we have to manually update some things. Okay. Maybe our software vendors will do their best to convert things over into the new format. But some things, if we never collected it in that manner, there's nothing to put in there. So someone says we're full for 25, 26. So congratulations. And when you say you're full, that means you have served and can have documentation that shows that all the, for example, 140 students you're funded to serve have at least 2 services. Great. And we're recruiting students for 26, 27 over the summer. Congratulations. That's the way it should be, right? Take it easy, just recruit. Don't worry about serving and getting your numbers because you got your numbers as at the end of May. Summer is the time to get ready for the next year and to recruit. I love it. If their first service date is before not September 1st, doesn't matter. We don't care about that. Will that produce an error when we report them on the 26-27 APR? What will produce an error is not September 1st, unless that's what you put, as your first date of service. So again, back to 4B, which isn't on the traditional 37 fields that we talk about, but it's over here. So September 1st is usually the first day of your budget. Not always. Some people have told me actually their budget date was pushed back this year, but traditionally, September 1st is your first day of your budget reporting period up until August 31st. It's no longer your reporting period for the APR, unless by coincidence, your first day of fall classes, which I have a client, I said, "Are you sure?" Really? She goes, "Yeah, our first day of classes is September 1st. Okay, well, lucky you, you have your budget year and your academic year match. Okay. Now, here, when you say okay, starts at fall, so then your reporting period starts September 14th. So their first date of service, you'll have to wait until the 14th since you don't want to count them for this year and you're over. So you either have to forward date or, hold off on serving them. But your date 4B is going to be September of 2026 here, okay, for the 26-27 APR. So any services, your data first service, if you want them new for 26-27, needs to happen on or after September 14th. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. So you must be maybe on the West Coast, maybe? Well, no, because anyway, yeah. So if you want them to be regular new for 26-27, the data for service needs to be dated on the 14th or after that. Otherwise, you will get an error message. Great question. All right, so we talked about the possible delay here and the ethnicity, and hopefully the vendors will get it together. Let's see here, academic need. Again, field 18, y'all. Almost every other question I get or that you may face when you're trying to figure out a student's unique situation is going to pop up around field 18. It's not when they were selected. It's not when they were recruited. It was when they received their first service. This is typically, and it should be, I would recommend, this is a recommendation, that when you identify, recruit, and select a student, this is not the date you put for selection. This is the date when they finally come to their first meeting. I mean, it is possible to identify, recruit, select, and serve someone in the same day. It doesn't happen that often. Most of the time, it happens prior to that, and students are selected, after a review of their application, and they're not live there in person. And then the student's informed, you've been selected. We would love to have you come in for your first meeting. Some of y'all call that orientation. Whatever you want to call it is fine. Just make sure during that first meeting that orientation begins or ends with at least 2 services being provided that you can claim as services provided. So one visit does not mean one service. It means at least 2 services in addition to the orientation. And that's finally their first date of service. And I hope they come back again so you can have more services. But worst case scenario, the absolute worst case scenario, at least you have one interaction with that student and a minimum of two services were provided. And that data first service occurred on or after the first day of classes if that's someone you want to claim as being new for 26-27. Okay. Can I count a student as graduated if they've completed all the requirements but didn't apply for their degree? We've audited, they've audited and they've met all requirements. Sometimes students forget or don't apply for their degree and weren't able to reach them. Wow, right? That's sad. Well, unfortunately, and I go just by, what's listed here. Let's look at the question. I don't want to, I don't want to speak before I double check. So let's go to the fields that would be, in play there. Okay. So the question is 31. Undergraduate degree certificate completed at the grantee institution. You say they've completed all the requirements. Okay. And it says participant's degree certificate status. I'm looking at, depending if you're 2-year or 4-year, Code 1, Certificate Diploma for Occupational Educational Program, less than 2 years. And that's saying their degree certificate status. It doesn't say completion here. And it asks about if they have a certificate that's at least 2 years. Then their first bachelor's degree, if you're, a 4-year college. The intent of this question is what we have to go by. Okay. The intent, it says degree or certificate completed. That means that they would have had to apply for that degree. And it's unfortunate they didn't apply to it. So I would say no, you should not claim it because I don't want you to try to, thank you for the 2-year. It's either 1 or 2, um, or 10 or 11 or 12 is an option there. Can you defend that? I could say, oh, that's too bad. I bet they meant to. And yes, I guess technically they completed, but they didn't apply for the degree. So I don't think that would stand in a review or an audit because the intent is that they've been awarded a degree. Okay. So sorry about that. That's what I would I mean, give it a shot, but you'd have to defend that the way it's asked. I would vote. I would go, unfortunately, to the side of saying no, that means they have to have a degree or certificate that's been issued. Okay. So 2 services can be done on the same day. Example, the orientation is held and the student meets with the coach to discuss classes, next meeting goals, etc. Again, which 2 services or more were provided? Was it academic advising? Was it financial literacy? Was it referral to tutoring? That counts as a service, even though you don't have to follow up and see if they actually received tutoring from the entity or the department on campus that you're referring them to. The instructions do clearly state that if you offer a student tutoring from y'all, from your project, from your tutors, if you offer them tutoring and they do not partake in tutoring from you, you can't count it as a service. But yet, if you refer them to the college's tutoring program, they can or they don't, they could totally blow you off and not, even go and attend, go to the referral, but you still can count it because you referred them outside to a service outside of your office. So that could even count as a service. But the question is, again, lots of times people say orientation, and that's all that you see in the contact notes and the service notes. And I'm like, no, well, what happened during orientation? I mean, the usual welcome to the program, but did you have a standalone financial literacy and possibly a career exploration or a CPP activity, an on-demand jobs ready to go so that you cover the welcome, but then you also end it with some standalone services that you can stand behind clearly. Okay. So yes, I mean, that's not my choice. Don't get me wrong. I would love for students to come back over and over again on a regular basis. But at times, especially nowadays, we're hurting just to stay in compliance. And we may have students, don't y'all have some students that come 20 times and others that don't barely come at all? So we get so busy working with those students that always come that we sometimes forget to check on those students that continuing that maybe are struggling so much they don't even want to come to our office, or they're doing okay, but see, just because they're on the in your database and you rolled them over from one year to the next and they're attending classes, you still have to show documentation that those students have received at least two services in order to count them on your APR. Otherwise, you have to bless them and let them go, make them code threes, enrolled but not receiving services, and work harder to get somebody new to apply and replace them because you got to serve your number to served. Okay. You're welcome. As long as you show their two standalone services. Okay. Nowhere in the regulations does it talk about contacts. We use that word, and a lot of our database terminology says contacts, contacts, contacts. We need to change that. It's services provided. Okay, how many services did a student receive? And again, let me add a little something to it. They can't just be random services. I know I talked about having some services ready to go, but they should have been tied into the student's individual service plan. And who could say that, everybody doesn't need a little bit of financial literacy, whether you like it or not. It's almost one of those, you know what? We're going to put here that you're going to get some financial literacy. And, who doesn't need some financial aid information or career in demand career info? Just in case, just letting, I know you got your heart set on this, but let me tell you what's the top jobs here in our jobs that are in demand. So it's supposed to not be, oh, let me just pick something to give the student. There should be some planning, and that comes from, the orientation and doing their individual service plan. And immediately, instead of saying, okay, we worked on your individual service plan, which is a service, academic, advice and assistance and post-secondary, I can put it under that, but it's just one service. And then saying, okay, we did that one thing. Let's set up a time for you to come back to talk about careers and financial literacy. Do you know that probably that second visit is not going to happen when you think it's going to happen? It may not happen at all. So I'm all for that first meeting taking a little bit longer individually so I can get the whatever orientation you want to get out there, but get at least two standalone services in addition to the individual service plan, because you got to come up with a plan, which is like a prescription to receive a handful of services. Oh, and you know what? Before you leave today, I'm going to give you two of those. And again, it's not to say, okay, you've had your two, bye-bye, I don't have to see you again. It's because stuff happens and they may leave, they may not come back, and you're trying to make sure you're protected compliance-wise. Okay. Right. So, and again, are they services that you can defend? You can just say, oh, just orientation. What do you mean? Financial literacy. And I try to make sure not every student has to receive all of the required services. Not every student or any student has to receive any required services. Maybe they just need, help with career information or with something that's permissible but not required. And it's okay. Why? Because it was on their individual service plan that, I just need tutoring, which is a required service. Okay, fine. But what if I needed something like, I don't know, assistance with preparing for, actually career exploration is not listed by name as a required service. But I need some information about career information. It's also a CPP. And I know there's a section on the APR where we can talk about the CPPs, but it's not on the listing of the required services. What do you mean? I'll show you. We'll go up here to Section 1, Part 2 of the APR, where they want to know a listing of students that have received the required services. So maybe a student comes in and I said, look, I just need career information. I got it going on, but I'm confused about that. Notice that career information, career assistance, advising with career issues here is not listed as a required service, but it is a permissible service. So a student comes in two separate times for one instance each of career services, great. but I try to make sure I package every time I meet with them to talk about career services with financial literacy at the same time. So they get two services during every interaction. Every contact has at least two services. Okay. And maybe financial literacy shows up here. So I get a number one here, but then career information about in-demand careers is not listed here, but that's okay because it's a permissible service. So in that student's file and record, it'll show he received some of the required services and some permissible services. Maybe they just come in for in-demand career. And so that's all they received. That's totally fine because that's all they wanted. So the ISP, the individual service plan, gives you a chance to customize the delivery of services per student instead of having them commit to a series of workshops they may or may not need, activities that they may not have any direct interest in. And maybe later on you can invite them to participate in those types of workshops or on-demand workshops like student lingo and some other stuff. But initially, my recommendation is that you try to make sure you provide them with exactly what they said they came in or they applied and said they needed as soon as possible to kind of build that rapport so that they'll say, you know what, these people listen to me. They just didn't take an application and maybe go through the same thing they make everybody else go and sign something saying, I'm going to attend this and this and this and this, you know, but they actually right away provided me with the financial aid information I needed and information about graduate school. I'm more likely to respond and come back because I got something right away. And then when they send me information about workshops or here's a link, I'm more likely to, you know what? Okay. Um, they delivered, so let's see what they're talking about here. Instead of sometimes I think, again, nothing really to do with APR, they're bombarded with kind of demands of you got to do this, you got to do that, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought y'all were helping me. I don't know if this is helping me. It's stressing me out, right? So anyway, let's see where we were. Where were we? I wanted to, field 18, field 22. Let me tell you, Field 22 is a beast. Look at all those breakdowns. Summer students, that's tough, man. In a perfect world, if my perfect SSS would be that I would get everybody recruited no later than May, maybe April. In a perfect world, I'd get all my new students recruited and all my continuing students would have had, everybody would have at least two services. And then I could say, okay, now I can take it easy this summer, work on the APR for 25, 26, because I know, especially if I'm at a four-year college, I know the day after graduation, and as soon as I see who's coming back who's registered again for the fall, I can start working on that APR. If I'm a two-year college, I'm still waiting to see where some students transferred to after they graduated, a handful, right? And I can contact them directly now, and the plan is to do this, but maybe you want to verify it and that verification won't come until November. I say go ahead and ask, do self-reported, do self-tracking. Go ahead and answer that, but put a little asterisk or something letting you know this is not finalized. And then you come back in November to verify that and expect for those numbers to go down. But that's what I would do if I could pick. I wouldn't nothing against them personally, but those summer kids, just the older I get, you'd think I'd get more used to them, but they mess with my head, the reporting every single time. All right, do we have to enter student social security number? No, you do not. It's a field that appears on student access, but I wasn't sure if it was a requirement on the APR. It is not a requirement of the APR. They got rid of that, 5 years ago, I think? It was, so that's why it's there. But it is not. Now they use a case number, field number 3. The case number is a TRIO generated number from the Department of Ed assigned to every current and prior year participant. And that's used to ensure that we include them in all our records. So it's also used to do the match SSS data records with the the field that they merge into. So case numbers have now replaced social security numbers. So you should not, I would, unless there's another reason or your institution requires it, I would stay away from asking about their social security numbers because they are not needed for the APR. They are not case numbers. And the crazy part is whenever you have a new student, that whole year, when you type in their name under field 4 and 5, when you get to the case number, you can't put in a case number. That will be assigned to the student once the Department of Ed even knows that they're around. So the Department of Ed won't know that this new student exists until when? Until you upload the APR for 25-26. Whenever you upload that, when it goes through its verification process and checks out what's new, check out to see if there's any errors or anything missing. Everything's great. They and then turn, you upload an Excel file. They take that, they make it theirs, rename it, and I don't know if they probably give you another clean, their version of it, which has usually the PR award number on there, and it usually says final from the Department of Ed. That Excel file will now contain the case numbers for anybody new for 25-26. You can't get case numbers for 25-26 students that are new until you upload the report for 25-26. Then, if you want to, immediately after you submit, you can go ahead and most of your software platforms, your databases, will allow you to export from the Excel file or import, whatever you want, whichever, and automatically update the case numbers for all the new students in your database for 25-26. You could do it right away, or you could forget about it until it's time to do the APR for 26-27. And then you're like, oh yeah. Sometimes people like to do it right away so that they realize that at the beginning of 26-27, not beginning, but when the APR is finally turned in, that instead of having two sets of students that don't have any case numbers, which would have been last year's new students that are now continuing students in 26-27, but don't have a case number because you didn't import it over. Sometimes they like to do that right away so that during 26-27, the only students they see in their database that do not have a case number are true new 26-27 new students. But honestly, the case number doesn't come into effect or impact you until you start working on the APR and realize you get an error message saying, hey, the case numbers are missing for a bunch of continuing students. And that's when you go, okay, it's an easy fix. Okay. So that's a roundabout way to answer about the Social Security numbers. Okay. Let's see. Any other questions? These are all great questions. Thank you. And thanks for putting them in the Q&A because that way we can do a spreadsheet of information there to show you when we answer these questions live. All right. So data for service, we talked about that. Field, let me talk a little bit about field 20. Field 20, just like field 19, are to be answered when a student is brand new. Okay. If it's brand new to the project in 25-26, you will have to answer 19 because it's their grade level upon entry into the project. 20 is asking how many hours were they enrolled in by the end of their first academic year served. So it's not asking how many hours are they enrolled in the semester they were selected. No, you have to skip that field and leave it blank, field 20, technically until the end of the summer or spring or summer semester. And then you can add up the fall of 2025 plus the spring of 2026 plus summer of 2026, if any. And then whatever that total is, come here and make the correct selection. Now, it does say here that, students who I believe it says that if they enrolled but didn't complete, you can still count just hours that were enrolled. Doesn't mean they completed them. So some people say, look, I have a kid that enrolled in 9 hours. They didn't complete them. I said, well, it said enrolled, and it does tell you put how many hours they're enrolled in, not how many hours they ended up earning. And there's also some information about those darn new summer students, how to answer that for them. Now, field 21 is cohort year, and that is tricky too when it comes to the summer students and new summer students. And don't you love it? You would think, I wish cohort, code 26 meant they were the part of the 26-27 cohort, but nope, it does not. So the 26-27 cohort is code 28. So anybody that was first served in the summer and is a new summer student, by default, they must have a cohort of 26-27. They count toward 25-26, but their cohort is 26-27. And that sometimes throws people off. So we have a couple of minutes here. So let me wrap up here. Participant status during the year, we talked about new, continuing that. Now, field 23 is very similar to field 20. Field 20 was asking the total number of hours a student was enrolled at the end of the first year served. That never changes. Okay. A student can be in the program for 10 years. Field 20 never has to be answered again. But field 23 does. Field 23 is asking how many years total were they enrolled in this year, So that may have to change. I think that field 20 and 23 take the most time. They're so time consuming. It's busy, busy work, and people really stress out about it. The crazy part is if you could accidentally, not on purpose, be totally wrong in your answer for 20 and 23, and it's not going to hurt anything because it's not going to count toward any of your objectives. The only thing is if when a student's new, whatever you put for field 20, which is asking, hey, how many hours were you enrolled in school? By the end of this first year that you were in the project, in the SSS project. And you go, okay, I took 28 hours, whatever. Okay. Then a minute later, hey, how many hours did you complete this year? And I'm like, wait a minute, you just asked me that. No, the first question was during your first year, how many hours did you complete? The second one was how many did you complete this year? And I'll keep asking you next year about this year. So it just so happens that in a new student's first year, that 20 and 23 need to match, right? Again, it's not a critical field for an objective, but it can make your life a nightmare, okay? When it doesn't work out. Field 24 finally here is the first field that counts toward an objective directly, and that's good standing. And the definition of good standing is listed in your grant proposal, what GPA it is. And so usually 25 and 24 need to make sense. Okay. You put the GPA for 25, and that should translate to either being in good standing or not good standing. Then we've got some other fields that, again, are asking about their college grade level at the beginning of this year versus at the end of this year. Those, again, are time consuming. Some people that are at 2-year colleges, they just max out at the 2 years. They say, well, we're 2-year college, so we always answer at the most. Someone starts at 2 years and ends at 2 years. That's fine. That's cool. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. You do y'all, just be consistent. The only thing that'll throw this off is if you say someone was a senior or a second-year student at the beginning of the year, and then all of a sudden they're a freshman again. You can't go backwards, and that'll throw them off. The other thing that throws this off on the APR in the past is if you put that they were a first year, and then even though they might have gotten credits coming in during the year, and technically they were a third-year student by the end of the year, it doesn't like it when 26 and 27 are more than a year apart. Isn't that crazy? We found that out the hard way. We're like, it don't work. They truly are a junior. They were a freshman, but their credits came in. So now they're a junior. And it wouldn't work until we went ahead and changed it to make them either a second-year student to begin with, or we made them a sophomore in 27. So it worked out. So anyway, just to quickly wrap this up, of course, field 31 is critical to count towards your graduation objective, right? The date is also critical. And then the field of study. Those three go together. Once you put a positive in one of those fields, all those other fields have to have a date. And finally, field 33 goes from being a code 16, which has not earned a degree or certificate for everybody else. I mean, this is not asking what is their major. This is asking their field of study when they earn their degree. So if they haven't earned a degree yet, everyone has a code 16. You just can put unknown or other 16. If they have a degree, they earned a degree, then you have to select something other than 16. The detailed instructions at the very end have a more detailed definition of what falls under each one of these categories, okay? And then we get to field 34, which is on persistence. And this is your first objective. How many students come back for another year or have graduated? So this is the one you want to definitely be 150% correct on. The other couple of fields here are about financial aid received, not a critical field, but what is critical if you do give out grant aid, they want to know how much grant aid was given out. And this is the amount for last year. I'm not sure what it is for this year because we just updated it manually, just typed in the numbers. So it'll give you an error message if you're not hitting the minimum amount or if you're above the maximum. Okay. So that in a nutshell, once again, is a little APR information. Thank you for joining us. If you have any other questions, please email me. You have my email address. And next week, I promise I'll take you on a tour of the APR in Bloomin'. And if anyone wants to share a demo of the Lakai or student access, and I think I'll reach out to those vendors as well, that equal time. That way they can take you through a tour of how to work on the APR on their platforms as well. Okay. Thank you all so much. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so here's a question. We have a lot of pre-nursing students. Many get a 2-year degree before starting nursing. When they start the 2-year nursing program, do we continue to report them as second year instead of going back to first year? Again, a couple of questions there. Are these students that were already in the program before, or are they continuing students? Are they new to you, just happen to, on their own, have a 2-year degree and then they want to start the program, or have they been with you the whole time? When they start the 2-year nursing program, see, a degree is a degree. So if you count the degree the first time, you want to go ahead and claim that, and it's a success. If it sounds like maybe you're a 2-year college, so you've already met eventually. If they did it before their 4 years was up, it's a good thing for them to get a degree. Now the question is, will they ever transfer? Well, they needed to have transferred at the same time they got that degree. So they've accomplished as much as they can because you can't count that transfer after it occurs after the year that they graduate. But if they want to continue to receive services, you need to determine whether or not you have space in your program and that you're not displacing someone else to make room for them if you don't have enough room left to continue to provide them with services. The key thing is, what additional services can you provide them? Can they still demonstrate a need for your services? Okay, unlike some other TRIO programs, they don't have to establish a need for services, but you do. So if you're going to continue to serve them, they will count toward your numbers. They may count toward persistence and good standing, but they're not going to help you with the graduation anymore because they already have graduated. Okay. All right. So hopefully that'll help you. And again, if you need more clarification or if there are other details for that, we can talk. But I definitely would, if they're in my program and I'm gonna, grab that graduation while you can. Some people will say, well, you know what? She got a 2-year degree, but you know what? I think she's going to transfer next semester or next year. I said, well, you can't claim it. It has to happen in the same calendar year. So claim the graduation. Don't, and some people say, well, they got this, but I'm waiting. Don't wait. Claim what you can because you never know what can happen. Okay. This is why no one has 100% of their students are going to graduate or graduate and transfer, right? Okay. So thank you all so much. Appreciate y'all. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Leah. And we'll call that a wrap and we'll see you all next week. Thank you.